In the exercise in the previous lesson, we built a simple HTTP server that could serve up static content. This was built completely using Node.js. Now that we have learned about Express, the minimalist framework that supports development of server on top of Node.js, let's now examine how we can use Express to build the same server in this exercise. To get started, go to the Node.js folder that we have been using for storing all the code for this course, and then create a new folder there named Node Express, and then move into this folder. Now, we will create a public folder here within the Node Express folder. Then we will go to the Node HTTP public folder and then copy these two files, the index.html and aboutus.html, to the Node Express public folder. We're going to serve up these two files using the Express server that we're going to build in this exercise. Now, going to the terminal, move into the Node Express folder in the terminal, and then at the prompt type npm init to initialize a Node application. And then for the package name, let's just use Node Express, and for the description we'll say Node Express examples, and entry point is index.js, and all the rest are the same like before. And let's create the package.json file. Now let me open the project using the editor, Visual Studio Code in my case, and then in the package.json file, let's go in and add in the new script called start, which is node index, and save the changes. Now that we have initialized the node module, let's go ahead and install the Express framework within the project to make use of it to build our Express server. So at the prompt, type npm install Express. So this is how you would install a third-party node module. If you are taking this course for the first time and have not taken the previous courses, then this is something that is important to note. This is how you would install a node module. By adding the ---- save, we are also saving the information that this Express third-party node module is a dependency for our project, and this information will be saved in the package.json file. If you have taken the previous courses of the specialization, then you already know about this information. So let's go ahead and install the Express module. And as you can notice, we are using Express version 4.16.3 in this course. So let's now go back to our code. Taking a look at the package.json file, you see that within the package.json file, by installing Express, we already see another property that is included into the package.json file called dependencies. This dependencies track all the packages on which this current project is going to be dependent upon. And here you see Express being installed there, and the corresponding version of Express being installed here. So this declares that this particular project is dependent upon Express version at least 4.16.3. In addition, you also see this folder called node modules created here. So this is where all the third-party node modules that are installed by your application are going to be stored. Now, when we do a git commit, we don't want to commit this node modules folder. So to ignore that, let's create a file named dot git ignore, and within the dot git ignore file, let's type in node modules. So this is letting Git know that we do not wish to commit the node modules folder to the Git repository. So with this, let's save the changes. So now when you create the Git repository, the node modules folder will be ignored. It is not required because you can always recreate the node modules folder anytime you clone this project from your Git repository by simply typing npm install. And this will look at the package.json file and look at all the dependencies and the development dependencies that are in the package.json file and automatically install all those packages for you. Now that we have completed this, let's create our first Express project. So to do that, we'll create a file named index.js. And in the index.js, we'll declare const express require Express. Now you note that Express is a third-party node module and it has been installed in our node modules folder in the correct directory. So when we declare this here, saying that this Express module is required, then it will be automatically included from the node modules folder into our application. Now also install HTTP, the core module here. Now that we have installed this, let's create the host name as localhost and the port number as 3000. So you see that we are using exactly the same way of doing this exercise as we did for the HTTP exercise earlier. Now, at this point, we would declare this const called app as Express. So this way we are saying that our application is going to use the Express node module. So once we do that, then Express provides a bunch of methods that we can use to construct our web server. So after this, we'll say app use, and inside here we will declare a function that will be called to set up our server. So this function takes three parameters: rec, which is the request, res, which is the response, and next. Now, as we saw, node, or rather Express, uses additional middleware. So the next is used when you need to invoke additional middleware to take care of work on your behalf. We will see the use of next in some of the later exercises. But the function here will take three parameters: rec, res, and next. Next is an optional parameter that can be not included if you are not going to use it within your code. So inside here we'll say console log, and then we'll log the headers, and we'll respond with the status code set to 200 and set header content type as text HTML. So you notice that much of this code looks very similar to the way we set up our node application. So we'll say res end, and here HTML body h1, we'll just say this is an Express server, and close off the tags there. And that's it. From your understanding of the node HTTP, you already understand what these three are doing. And the same thing is also done in the Express server. Now that we have set up the server using the app, we will set up the server, and then this is where we will use the HTTP create server. And this create server is now going to take app as its function parameter there, and then thereafter we'll simply say server listen port host name and the arrow function here, within which I'm going to print out console log backquote server running at http colon / host name colon port. That's it. So you see that this part is very much similar to what you have done for the HTTP exercise, except that the create server now takes this app which we have declared earlier, Express. So Express is adding in additional functionality which will be used by the HTTP server that we create using Node. And once we are done with this, let's save the changes, and then we will go ahead and start the server and have a look at what the server will serve up. Going to the terminal, at the terminal, type npm start, and you would see that your server is up and running. Now, when we access this from either the browser or from Postman, you will see what it serves up. So here I have Postman up and running. Let me send the GET request to localhost 3000, just like before, and you would see that this is serving up the HTML code that we included there. And so this says this is an Express server. Clicking on the preview, this will show you what it will look like in a browser here. And this shows the raw version of the code that has been sent back from the server side. And you can see that the status code is 200 OK, and the other header information that has been sent from the server side. Notice in particular it says X powered by Express in the header. With this, we complete the first part of this exercise, where we have seen how we can make use of Express to set up a simple web server. Let me now stop the server and then initialize the Git repository. So at the prompt, I will type git init and then git status, and you see that files that have been untracked. So I will say git add dot, and these files are now added into the Git repository. And so when you say git status, you see the files that have been added. Note in particular that the node modules folder has not been added to the Git repository, because in the .gitignore file, we explicitly stated that the node modules folder should not be included in the Git repository. So now let's check in or commit this change by saying git commit -m express example. And we have committed this to our Git repository. In the second part of this exercise, we will look at the use of a Express middleware called Morgan. Morgan is used to log information to the screen. So it'll log information about incoming requests to the screen so that we can see some information being printed in our console here. Also, we'll see how we can set up our Express server to serve up static HTML files. To get started, at the prompt, type npm install Morgan minus minus save. Now Morgan is going to be a dependency that we're going to be using in our application. So that's why it's minus minus save. And this would get installed. And you can see that I'm using Morgan version 1.9.0 in this course. Now that we have installed Morgan, let's see how we can make use of it within our application. So going to our application, the way to make use of Morgan is to declare here const Morgan require Morgan, and then we'll say app use Morgan with the development. So this is the development version, so it'll print out additional information to the screen as required. Now going into our application, within our application, I'm not going to log the entire headers. Instead, let me remove this because Morgan will log sufficient information for us to look at. And I'm going to set up my server to serve up the HTML files from the public folder. So to do this, I'm going to declare app use and express static. This tells Express to serve up the static files from _dir name. So this indicates that this says the root of this project, and we will find those files in _dir name plus /public. So recall that we created the public folder in the Node Express folder. So this is informing Express that you will look at this particular folder in the root folder of this project and inside the public folder. So this will be the folder from which static HTML files will be served up by my Express server. After making these changes, let's save the changes and then restart our server and then see how it works. Going to the prompt, let's type npm start to start our server. And once the server is up and running, let's examine what it will serve up when we send various requests to this server. Using Postman, let's first send a GET request to localhost :3000. And this, you notice that it is serving up the index.html file. We have set up our server to serve up the static files from the public folder, and if we just say localhost :3000, by default it will serve up the index.html file. So this is how your typical web server works. So that's what we have ended up setting up our Express server to do. Now let's type in localhost :3000 about us.html and send the request, and says this is about us.html. So the about us.html file has been served up here. So in the preview, you can see the resulting file that has been served up from our server side. Let's try to access a non-existent file. And you see that when you try to access a non-existent file, then it will default to the second setup that we have done in our code, which says this is an Express server. We have not specified to our Express server how to handle situations where it encounters a file that doesn't exist. So that is why it is using the default that I have set up right below the Express static, which is to serve up the default value. Well, of course, this is not the most ideal behavior, but that's what we have in the Express server at this moment. Later on, we will modify the Express server to handle errors in more detail in later exercises. This is also a good time for you to do a git commit of the changes. So let's check git status after stopping the server, and we'll add the modified files and then do git commit -m express serve static files. That's it. With this, we complete this exercise. In this exercise, we have seen how we can set up a simple web server to serve up content on our behalf.